Hey, everybody, and welcome to As the World Works. I'm going to start this evening off a little bit different than most of these podcasts because this is one of those that you ever met a person in your life that you meet just one time, you happen to walk into a place or down the street, and there's a spark, and you see it in them, and there's a light that you can't ignore and you want to know more. And if you've got the courage, you'll step up and say, what is it about you? What do you have that's different? So I'm going to rewind just for a second before I introduce our special guest tonight and tell you a little bit of a story. So it's 2011. I've been in the CrossFit world for 6-8 months, right? So I'm a single dad. A buddy of mine, Reed Williams, very close, longtime family friend, has a place up there in Aspen and invites me and my two beautiful daughters up to 4th of July. And we get to his place. It's beautiful. When I was a kid, we used to have a place up in Colorado, and so I have very fond, nostalgic memories, but I hadn't been in a long time. Changed a lot. So we get settled in, and my buddy says, hey, there's this annual Boogies Buddy Race. I'm at altitude, right? So I go on this run. I'm winded, but I wake up the next morning and I'm like, I'm going to go drop in this box. For people that don't know the CrossFit world, a box is a gym. And I drop in at Aspen Crossfit, and I'm recovering from the day before. Meet this guy, Erik Larson, and we guys just kind of hit it off. He's got this energy that's just like blows your mind, and he's all jazzed, but not in like this manic way, but just in like, and I'm excited about life. I love my life. I'm just excited about this thing going on like this, and I'm like, geez Louise, who's got this kind of like maybe it's the mountain air. Maybe it's so he's got his back to me. He's sitting at his desk and he's looking at this picture. And he says, see that right there? I just finished that Kokoro camp. I was like, what is that? And he was like, dude, it's like this 50-hour total immersion, pre-buds, kind of like crazy SEAL training out in Southern California outside of San Diego. It's Kokoro camp. It's led by Mark Devine, this former Navy SEAL who's the coach at SealFit, the owner of SealFit. And I just did that, and it was huge. And I was like, that's effing awesome. That's crazy. I had no idea what that meant, but I was just like, so that's it. And then he starts talking about this Hoffman process, and he starts talking about his life. And I'm just like taking all this in. Again, I'm at altitude. I'm trying to recover. So then I ask, kind of what else about his life, but it was very, very quick. It was very one of those, like I said, not to make this ultra long-winded because we'll get into his story in a minute, but Erik Larson was one of those profound people in my life that along my journey made a huge difference in the things that were placed at the right time. And I will tell you really quickly, fast forward, I trained for Kokoro as a result of his inspiration. And it was a hard training. I was doing 2 days CrossFit and just all this crazy stuff. The day I was going into it, the day before, it was my birthday. It was my 45th birthday, and that was my goal. And I tore my meniscus doing something very ego-driven. And it was totally disheartening because I couldn't go do this thing I had trained so long for. And then as recovering, my mother passed away within a couple of months on New Year's Day, 2013. So I called Erik and said, what should I do? Continue to train for this thing or go to Hoffman, the Hoffman process, which is something we can talk about a little bit too. And he told me Hoffman. So not only a spiritually minded heart of a guy, but also a grit, go through life, forged through with a heart which is the balance, right? So I want to introduce my pal, Erik Larson. That was a long intro, brother, but well worth it for what you've meant to me and what you've meant to the world. So want to give it up for you. Thanks for joining us today.
Man, I appreciate that, Sam. You know, as you were talking, I was recalling that that moment that we met, and you know, from that time forward, obviously with some challenges lately, but life has been pretty darn good, and life has been elevated in that sense. And thank goodness for all the things that I have chosen to do for myself to get to where I'm at today. And I didn't, you know, one thing that I want to mention is, I don't know if you recall this, but and we can get into how I heard about SealFit, but my camp started on October 22nd of 2010, which was my 45th birthday.
I did know that.
Yeah.
Sort of set a precedence a couple years later. We're very close.
Yeah.
So, but you had been training quite a bit longer, which brings me to something that I know about you. So you started as an accountant, right?
Oh boy.
You're oh boy.
Oh
So
boy.
that was your life. You're from Oregon, right?
Yep. Grew up
And
in Southern Oregon, which right in the heart of the fires that just emaciated Southern Oregon, in a town called Medford. And fortunately, my my folks' place was never in jeopardy, but my mom did evacuate, so everything's all good at home.
So that's amazing. I'm thankful for that. You went to where did you go to college?
I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Okay, and degree
graduated from there. And when I left Cal Poly, I had a choice to go LA or San Francisco, and my mom's folks were in the Bay Area, so I went to San Francisco. Well, I had a job before I went to San Francisco. I got hired by Ernst & Young, went there, worked in the San Francisco office downtown in the Bank of America building for 5 years. And all the while I was there, I was on a nationally ranked 37-foot Express 37 sailboat. So had some fun times in the Bay.
Okay, so it wasn't completely banal, homogenous, typical accounting sort of.
It was actually pretty fun. I worked with a really fun group of people, and we definitely made the most of life. And I made the most of my time in San Francisco.
All right, there you go. So good to know that, because I was looking back on this like, man, I was like fucking like dying on a limb. And then, but the good thing is that regardless of what that meant, there was a pivot, right? There was a moment you're like, this is too much weight. This is not for me. So you've always been into fitness then, it sounds like, right?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up lifting weights all through high school. I used to work out at 5 a.m. on Saturday mornings with Bill Pearl, who is one of the biggest names in the bodybuilding world. He was from Phoenix, Oregon, which doesn't really exist anymore. That whole area got burnt down. And then went to college. I actually got into bodybuilding even more in college until I couldn't swing a golf club anymore, and I thought, this is stupid, so I gave that up. But to your point, I did pivot. However, I left Ernst & Young, and I had a job with a local firm here in Aspen, and it took me another 16 years, Sam, to realize that I didn't enjoy that career. So for those of you that are listening, one of the messages that I want to put out there tonight is, don't stay in a career that in some ways is killing you just to please somebody. I thought, oh man, my parents will kill me if I leave this career. And I wouldn't, if I had to do it over again, I certainly would have figured out what really lit me up and gone and done that. And it took me a little bit of a while.
Yeah. How would you have known that in the middle of getting, the Eagle landing every 2 weeks, getting paid?
Yeah. What
do I really want to do?
It's interesting, Sam, because it came from getting kicked in the teeth with a divorce, and becoming a single dad with a 6 and a 4-year-old. That's how old Anya, my kids, were at that time. And then really doing some soul searching. You know, it was literally a month, I guess. Yeah, a month later. Well, it was a week after I got served with divorce that I learned of something called the Hoffman process. And a month later, I was there. And it was really through that, pardon me, that, you know, as you know, and we can talk more about it, really came alive, discovered who I am, and took off the social masks and really started living. And at that point, started to really dive into, you know, what the heck is it that I want to do? And it didn't happen right away. But I did a number of other things after Hoffman, in the self-discovery, self-insight world. And, at one point I started asking myself, okay, so I'm really ready to do like a deep dive, like what I thought was a deep dive. Hoffman's about as deep as it gets, but I was thinking more along the physical lines. And so I started researching on the internet. I typed in, you know, Navy SEAL training camp or Navy SEAL boot camp, and, you know, immediately SealFit comes up, and I thought, oh no, it does exist. And and then, so I mean, this is kind of scattered, but I'm going to roll with it. At the gym, literally, I don't know, maybe a week later, I get this phone call from this awesome dude who's a lifelong friend now, by the name of Glenn Waters, 2 times or 3 times CrossFit Games Masters athlete. He calls me up and he said, hey, my wife and I are in town. We want to come out to your gym. And I said, okay, cool. He said, we'd like to ride our bikes. Can you give us directions? And I said, where are you? And he said, we're down by the red brick schoolhouse. And I said, he said, how do you know the house right to the right of it? And I said, oh, I know exactly where you are. I'll just hop on my bike and ride down there. So I ride down there, and, you know, one of those instant friendships, you know, you just know. And we start pedaling about a block away, and he's like, hey, how'd you get into CrossFit? And I said, well, I was looking at this thing online called SealFit, and I thought he was going to drive right into the ditch. You know, he's like, you got to be kidding. I literally just did that.
No way.
He said, you must go. And so now I'm going, oh no. So anyway, they stayed for a week and we trained together. We had the best time. I just talked to him the other day.
But this guy is like, are you thinking at that point, like, of course he did it. Of course he made it through it. Or
well, he hadn't been to the games at that point yet. You know, we're still just CrossFitters, right? We're just like training and having fun and getting after it every day. So his wife's a great athlete. So Glenn and Kristen and I trained together for a week, had a great time, you know, had dinners at his brother's house outdoors, and really had a great time. So that was July, I guess, of 2010. And I opened my gym on May 3rd of 2010. So this is like fresh. So, he leaves, and fast forward to September, he calls me up and, hey, Erik, it's Glenn Waters. He said, what are you doing about that camp? And I said, nothing. And he said, well, come on, what do you mean nothing? And I said, well, brother, I said, you know, that scares me, man. I was looking, but I didn't know that I was really going to go. And he said, well, there's one spot left. You really ought to go. And he said it starts on, and there's another guy from their gym, used to be CrossFit Nasty. Now it's Stephen Flom's Cincinnati Strength and Conditioning. And Glenn's a oral surgeon, maxillofacial oral surgeon by day, and CrossFitter by, you know, every other time. And so he said it starts on October 22nd. And I said, well, okay, so I'm clearly meant to go to that because that's my 45th birthday that day. So this other guy, Dustin Winterholt, was already registered from his gym, former MMA fighter. And so I call and I go through the interview process, and I get myself signed up, and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck am I doing?
This is a month before.
This is a month, but well, yeah, this is September. It's in October.
I mean, it's like, yeah.
It's in October. So, so ultimately then his younger brother, Ken, who's in the Navy, putting himself through medical school, just signs up. there's a spot becomes available. Somebody drops out for whatever reason, and Ken signs up, and Ken doesn't have a clue what this is. He just signs up. His brother said, you got to go do this. So the three of us go out there. Glenn comes with, and he's like our photographer. You know, he's an alumni, knows Divine and all those guys. And Mark Divine, Commander Mark Divine, rather, founder of SealFit. And he's our photographer the whole week. So that's how that whole thing played out. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, the universe just says, okay, you're looking at this thing. We're going to put someone right in your lap, and they're going to make sure and see to it that you go to this thing. So, so that's how that whole thing came about. And coincidentally, well, no,
Yeah,
let me rephrase that. I don't like that word coincidentally. Subsequently, Ken, younger brother Ken, by the way, all three of us made it through the crucible event of Kokoro, Kokoro number 12. Ken and his wife Jeannie have since been to the Hoffman process.
Wow, 10 evolutions,
Yeah.
by the way, right? At Kokoro.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that, what would you say? That was 12? What was it?
Kokoro 12, yeah. Now they're on
was-
Kokoro. Well, they're currently not running them, but when the last one they had pre-COVID, I would guess would be like Kokoro maybe 54, something in that realm.
Yeah, it's come just propelled so far into a different place too, by the way, separately.
Yeah.
But that was probably the most viewed Kokoro. I don't know if your friend was a photographer or the videographer for that one that you were involved with.
No. So
That was
so here's what happened. So I had heard that there was going to be a bunch of CrossFit Games athletes at this thing. You know, it was a rumor, but which ultimately became true.
Yes.
And, you know, I thought, I don't want to be the anchor at this camp. You know, I'm 45. I didn't know. And so Again Faster, and I'm not even sure Again Faster is still around, but they were an equipment vendor started by John Gilson. And Rogue, started by Bill and Katie Henninger. They had the Tahoe Throwdown. And a bunch of OGs were there. This was back with Spieler and Matt Shan and Tommy Hackenbrook and, you know, Rob Orlando, Kristen Clever. The list goes on. And they had this throwdown in Tahoe. And I think the Rogue team won. But anyway, they were having a blast up in the woods in Tahoe. And so the Rogue team, a number of them anyway, came down to Kokoro. So Katie Henniger, I believe Katie won for the women in the games in 2008. Anyway, she had a broken toe from the throwdown. So Katie was there, Kristen Clever, Rob Orlando, Tommy Hackenbrook, Miko Salo, some OG names. Greg Amundsen was there. You know, I don't know if Greg was ever at the games, but he's in a lot of the old videos doing like Fat Fran at 135 on the thrusters.
Who am I thinking of that was just crushing it back then from?
Well, Miko Salo won the games, I think, in 09 for the men.
That's it. Yeah.
So he was there.
And he was just pulling guys around, and they were like going, holy crap, look at this guy. Right.
Well, he was like the cyborg, you know, he's like, you know, all of us are just trashed, and they asked him how he's doing. He said, this is fun.
This is fun. Yeah,
that was fun. Anyway, I'm not sure I would use the word fun, but clearly one of the defining moments of my life being able to make it through that thing. Yeah. And, you know, it didn't matter. I was going to say it didn't matter what level athlete you were. I guess in a sense that's true. You had to be prepared for Kokoro. You definitely didn't just show up and say, oh, this sounds like fun. Let's do this. I had done CrossFit for a year and felt like I was pretty well prepared, and I did finish. There were 28 in our camp to start, and there were 18 of us left at the end, including all those names that I just mentioned, and my friend Ken and Dustin Winterhalt. So
all three of you guys made it to
we made it, man.
Did he still have his camera in tow at the end?
His brother Glenn was there doing the photographs, but I forgot to mention, I don't know if you know, I guess their company now is called Buttery Bros, but Heber Cannon is a videographer and a media guy for the CrossFit Games. So Heber was there doing the filming, and maybe Rory McKernan, you know, the voice of the games. but they were there doing the filming. So Glenn was just doing stuff for us personally, you know, catching those moments of despair when we thought there's no way I might die.
Yeah, from what I hear, people underestimate the value of running.
Well, you know, here's the thing. I had been given some tips and insights on how to train for this thing, and I pretty much did straight up CrossFit, but this, you know, you're going to do thousands of push-ups, you're going to do thousands of flutter kicks, you're going to do thousands of burpees, you're going to do thousands of squats, air squats, and then you're going to, you know, you're going to do log PT. You're in the surf, constantly soaking wet and freezing and covered in sand, and, you know, just as an irritation factor. But I swear, the first 2 hours we were on the grinder as evolution number one. And when the fear factor sets in, when the cadre comes down and starts laying into you, I swear I thought, I feels like I've never done a push-up in my life, and I can barely do 10. And there's a real psychological factor to having that cadre come down and just start laying into you. You know, Ken missed a belt loop. He's the guy that's actually in the Navy. And one of the SEALs who goes by the nickname Taco came down and just read him the riot act. And I thought, okay, Ken's in the Navy. I'm screwed. This is like the first few moments at Kokoro. And I thought, I'm done. But of course I wasn't.
This was after Murph?
No, this was the first 2 hours of camp.
This is before
First 2 hours. And I thought, oh my God, we got like 58 hours to go. And hour number 2, you know, I'm thinking to myself, what did I get myself into?
Do you think that that whole experience raised you sort of just in your personal development a notch of confidence?
I would say way more than a notch, you know.
Yeah.
There's a saying that if you move a micron, that's profound. And I moved way beyond that. And Sam, I think about Kokoro every day. You know, there's something about Kokoro that comes up. There's the mindset. You know, today at the gym, we had a full pretty much hour of squatting, and then we saved a little metallic fun for the end, max burpees in 5 minutes. And, you know, I gave the crew a talking to and said, guys, you're being asked to do 5 minutes of work of a single movement called a burpee. You know, I said, if you take yourself out and say that, oh, that's a lot of burpees, or you can't do 5 minutes of burpees, then you need to start rethinking how you show up in life. And people put up some extraordinary numbers. I mean, that was tough. And you gotta remember, we're at 8,000 feet. So it's like taping your mouth with duct tape and putting a straw in there and saying 3, 2, 1, go, and attempting to do burpees for 5 minutes. So it's a whole different suck factor. But no, Kokoro I think about every day.
You guys,
Absolutely.
You know, you got guys doing how many pull-ups in 48 hours? Like thousands.
Well, you know, so after the 2 hours, we went on a run that seemed like it went forever, and then we got into some PT down on the beach. Of course, we were soaking wet at that point and covered in sand, and came back and had the one and only catered meal, thinking, oh man, the food here is great. Pasta, pizza, Caesar salad. And then, you know, on full bellies, they said, okay, after dinner, guys, we're going to do Murph. And of course, by then we had filled up our Tyvek bags full of sand with about 40 pounds, stuffed them in the world's shittiest canvas backpacks ever with no waist belt. And in fact, I probably still have the scars on my neck from those straps. And then we did Murph, and we had a time cap, and you know, I thought to myself, you got to be kidding.
Yeah,
and then we carried on all through the night and all through the next day, all through the next night. And then, you know, into Sunday, late afternoon before we were done, and we didn't sleep a wink.
Did you, does any of that make you think about looking back? And if you're talking to your younger self, would you have said, yes, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to be a SEAL?
You know, that's an interesting question, Sam. And look, I am not military. My dad retired as a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. So I have an appreciation for the fact that my dad was in the military as a reservist. And, you know, I would not ever hold myself out to be anything but, you know, a civilian. And I've got great respect for the military and in particular special forces. And I happen to gravitate probably because of the camp, and I know a bunch of these guys who I've got great respect for, these SEALs. And I think, they're the baddest of the badass, in my humble opinion. Rangers and Green Berets might disagree, but nonetheless, I didn't ever consider going into the military. So I'm fascinated by the limited knowledge I have of what they actually get to go out and do.
Yeah.
So, I didn't ever suggest to my son that he go do that. Not as an avoidance. Just simply, he never expressed any interest in it. And so I didn't push it, but, I might have considered it.
So talk about that for a second, if we can. You said your mom was evacuated during these recent fires in Oregon, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Both your son and daughter are in Australia in college.
Yeah. My daughter is a junior at Sydney University. My son will start his freshman year in late February, early March. So yeah, they're both down there.
And you're 10 years into owning 10, almost 11, right? 10 years anniversary.
May 3rd was our COVID no celebration 10-year milestone anniversary.
Your dad was a Lutheran minister, sweet guy, friends with the rabbi next door, friends with everybody in the community, had a heart bigger than gold, passed away in the last few months, correct?
July 8th, I got a phone call teaching the 5:30 class, ran in to grab something off my desk, saw my phone all lit up with a missed call from both of my nieces, sisters' daughters, and a missed call from my sister and a text from my son Luke saying, call Aunt Heidi right away. And I thought, oh, geez, something happened to my sister's husband. And called my sis, and she was in one of those hysterical moments of crying where you can barely breathe, let alone talk. And she was able to muster the words that Dad died. And one of the worst moments of my entire life, Sam. My dad was 82 and had just gotten a haircut, picked up another, bucket of stain and was staining the fence. And told my mom his chest felt tight. She said, go to the doctor. That's the last she saw of him. Yeah. Unimaginable. I still can't believe that my dad in the physical form is not someone I'll ever be able to have a cup of coffee with again.
I was bringing all those things together, Erik, not as anything dramatic to, pander at all, but just to say that it's been a big, heavy year. And right? I mean, I know what that feels like to lose a parent. It's different for everyone, but I know the pain. And then, your kids grow up, they go off, you're in this place. And so what is grit? Okay. That's such a big term used in resilience and heart and grit and things like that. But at the same time, vulnerability is in the middle of that too.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Like, just telling that story, I'm on the verge of tears. So, you mentioned it's been a rough year. So, we had a no celebration 10-year anniversary. That's a big deal for a small business. And especially after it's been shut down at that point for 5 weeks out of the 2 months, wondering how in the world we're going to make it, not being able to pay rent, etc. Then, navigating through how are we going to do this? How do we make lemonade out of lemons? We do these online or live Instagram classes that don't need any equipment. We loan out equipment so people can do other stuff. All the while I'm thinking, man, are we going to be able to even survive this thing? And then we get the word that we're going to be able to open. A couple of weeks later, I get the phone call that my dad passes. A week later, my son and his mom head out for Australia to start a new life in university down there. My daughter had already been down there. And, you know, I mean, that I just thought, what more can happen? And then my mom recently gets evacuated in the fire. So what is grit? You know, grit, first of all, I've learned over the course of, I guess, the last 15 years, I went to Hoffman 15 years ago, come November this year, is I am not defined by my circumstances. You know, a lot of people just say, oh, well, I took a bite out of the shit sandwich and that's just life. Or, you know, how you doing? Well, same shit, different day. Okay, that's being defined by your circumstances. I by no means, I have nothing to do with that in any way, shape, or form. So grit, no matter what's going on in life, to me, is the ability to wake up in the morning, put my feet on the floor, get up. In my case, I come out, set a timer, meditate for 20 minutes, and get on with my day. And not necessarily, not step in front of the arrows that get shot at me, you know, but be able to navigate my way, step out of the way of those things, and continue to forge ahead. And look, not every day is an awesome day for me. You know, I have my days where I wake up and my gut's just full of anxiety, and I've got some worry on my mind, wondering, you know, what's going to happen. And oftentimes that thing that's going to happen never even happens. You know, it's that, what's that Mark Twain quote? You know, most of the problems or worries in my life never even happened. Yep. So it's the ability to get up and get through the day and make a difference in people's lives. In my case, that's one of my goals. And to come home at the end of the day and say, you know what, I did good and that was a great day. So, so that's in large part to me what grit is.
When is it a power statement of yours, birthed from Hoffman or somewhere else, that is a resounding mantra in your life that I've heard? I love my life.
I love my life. Yeah. Triple exclamation point.
It just comes out. It's just a flow. It's not even a thought.
I love my life. You know, people will ask me. In fact, I have a hat that I had embroidered at one of those, you know, those places called Lids.
Yeah.
And they've got the embroidery machine. I got a black mesh Nike hat that says, I love my life on it. You know, It's not as vibrant as it used to be because I wore the heck out of the thing. And people would walk past me and I'd see them look at my hat. And I could see them like reading the hat, and I'd say, do you? And they say, oh, no, I'm just reading your hat. And I said, well, do you love your life? And I get that, well, I don't know, you know, I don't know about today. And it's like, okay, but people say, how you doing? I say, I love my life. And they're sort of taken aback by that.
Your voicemail says, it's Erik Larson, can't get to you right now, but I love my life and I hope you do too. And if you don't, you got to think about what needs to change. Yeah. And today, when you were talking about the 5 minutes of maximum burpees, it's sometimes it's just the one thing that needs to change, because we get so inundated, right? By I've got to change this and the noise and so how have you simplified your life with all the stuff that is transitioned over the years and where you are today? Is it routine? Is it compartmentalizing, or is it just really honing into your spirit?
Well, first of all, I personally, I don't like the word routine because routine's kind of like another word that starts with R is rut. So it's not a routine. I would like to suggest that I have a daily practice. How's that? I like the feel of that a lot.
I like the feel of that a lot.
And so, Sam, being a Hoffman grad, you understand the concept of having tools to navigate life, right? So I'm grateful that was like my foray into the whole world of self-insight. And I would consider Kokoro, SealFit Kokoro, to be self-insight, because you really get to see who you are. So of all the things that I've done, I've been to a leadership camp in the Catskills, went through 3 years of a program with Peak Potentials, and did fire walks and sweat lodges, and jumped off the top of a telephone pole, blindfolded, strapped in, and had to jump out and ring a bell without being able to see anything. I've done some crazy stuff. All of them have
did you walk
helped me
coals
to.
with Tony Robbins?
No, this was with Peak Potentials. That the joke at Peak Potentials was that, and with all due respect to Tony Robbins, because I think he
100%.
adds value to many people's lives, is you spend $10,000 to prepare all weekend to walk like 10 feet over 1,000-degree coals with Tony. Guys, we got a half an hour to get lined up, and you're going to walk 30 feet over 1,000-degree coals, in addition to all the other crazy stuff we did over the course of this week at this camp. So, yes, I've walked 30 feet over 1,000-degree coals. And so anyway, but back to the question is like, what do I do? So I make it a point to get up, and the first I pee. Otherwise, if I'm meditating, I'm sure going to have to pee. So I get up, I pee, I set a timer for 20 minutes generally, and sit down and I meditate for 20 minutes. And then coffee is my jam. I quit drinking 15 years ago, and so I'm a big coffee connoisseur, and I love the ritual of making a cup of coffee and enjoying my coffee. So I do that, and then generally set my intention for the day, knowing that there's probably going to be something that comes along that was unexpected, and but knowing that I can't please everybody. I used to be a people pleaser, and of course then I didn't ever look after myself because I was pleasing everybody else. And then just know that some things are going to come along, and decide that I'm going to confront these things and take them head on. And that has it sounds very simple, but that's in a nutshell how I get through my day.
That one thing you just said about pleasing, that it sounds simple, but that pattern is something that I can completely identify with, and
you're
it
intimate with
life,
it,
right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
and it shows.
Yeah, and you learned that from somebody along the way.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
As an adaptation.
Right.
It wasn't a rebellion. It was literally an appendage of an adaptation just for survival, as we know.
Right.
So, heart. We talked about grit. Where does heart fit in all this? I know we're going a little bit deep here, but
no, I love it.
You're a man of you get your heart involved, and I mean that on the metaphysical sense, on the literal sense, of you're a heartfelt guy. You're a heart-filled guy. When you dive into something, it is not half-assed, right?
No.
So I know that something that sometimes when people are, and I'm not saying you're linear by any stretch, but some linear people in the world, which I would say humanity is kind of linear. Like, I'm going from A to B. This is my script. This is where I'm going. And oh shit, there's not a script. What am I going to do? Freak out. But then you get to a place where where something ignites, and you're like, that scares me. It's creative. It's something like outside my box. I'm not suggesting this about you, but I've noticed recently some beautiful, amazing photography that's come out of you that I had no idea within the last year that was even in your wheelhouse. But it's become
neither did I.
Dude, you're dialing something in that is an expression. So how does that work in with all this other stuff?
Well, we've got heart and we got creativity are the two.
Heart, creativity,
heart and creativity. So can I just tap into the creativity first?
Yeah.
So there was a time in my life, Sam, and also the concept of being linear. I would say in many ways being a CPA, that's for sure left hemisphere, right? You got to be creative to be a CPA, especially in the tax world. But to me, that's very linear. Okay. The right hemisphere is the artistic, the creative, the heart-centered. side of life. And I remember that because I started, I just bought a domain. I think it was called, it might have even been called Right Hemisphere. But there was a time in my life, Sam, and I can still hear my old self, pre-Hoffman, saying, I don't have a creative bone in my body, verbatim. Not just once, but over and over and over and over again. So as a result of that, I had a self-esteem about the size, the width of a toothpick. And, you know, if I got called upon to organize something, whether it be at school or at the firm, you know, I would just cringe. I'd want to crawl under the table because I didn't believe in myself and be like, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to do this or that, whatever the case may be. And, you know, after, so fast forward, think about the gym. I mean, I painted every inch of that gym. I organized that gym. I set up that gym the way it's set up. And, you know, if you just go on our Facebook page for Aspen CrossFit, there's like 130, you know, not everyone's a 5-star, but 97% of them are 5-star reviews of, I've never been to a box like this. And, you know, I'm tooting my own horn right now, but I'm also proud of what we as a community under my direction have created at Aspen CrossFit. It's phenomenal. And the facility is second to none. And I'm not talking about the flashy wood paneled walls and the coffee bar and all that stuff. You know, we're the OG gym in a warehouse. And kudos to those that have that sort of fancy, newfangled type of gym. I think it's cool, you know, but that's just not what we are.
You don't have a coffee bar.
We don't have a coffee bar. I do my coffee at home. But nonetheless, Sam, I look at the gym and I think, man, I created this thing.
Yep.
And that comes out of, so let me dovetail that comes out of heart. And it's really interesting that my dad was I think 40-year career Lutheran pastor, you know, so a very heart-centered guy. The people that came out of the woodworks that didn't even go to our church, when they found out about the passing of my dad, responded to the posts that I put up, you know, and I'm still in the grieving process, but in the initial grieving process that said my dad had one of the most profound effects in their life and weren't even members of our church. And it might've been something that he said to them at a sporting event or, you know, whatever. I had more than one person reach out and say, your dad was one of the one people in my life that made me feel loved. You know, so I look at what I'm doing now. And I mean now as a CrossFit gym owner and a coach, mentor, inspirer, whatever you want to call it. And certainly wasn't quite the case as a bean counter, aka CPA. And I look at the stuff that I'm doing now, and in some ways, it's you know, parallel to what my dad did in a different venue.
I saw something
you know,
you posted. Your dad was a risk taker in his world as a minister. You posted a letter response from Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big gesture to go, you know, I'm one guy over here, right? And I'm asking Mother Teresa to come give a lecture.
Yeah.
And so he threw it out there, right?
He did. He did.
And she replied in the sweetest way. And so the risk that he took was like, I'm not entangled with this. I don't have expectations.
Yeah.
But my love obviously reciprocated from her love. And it was a beautiful response. So,
well, and another, you know, one of the Oregon senators at the time, Mark Hatfield, actually followed my dad's letter up with another letter encouraging her to come all the way from Calcutta to Little Medford, Oregon, you know, and she gracefully declined given her schedule. But my dad had, there's another letter that I haven't yet posted to, you know, dearest Bob, Joan, Eric, and Heidi from Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who at the time and still is through her books, the you know, preeminent figure on death and dying. My mom said, yeah, Dr. Ross was at our house for dinner and you were little and you went into your room and she had had enough with adults and went into your room and closed the door and got down on the floor and played cars and marbles or whatever for like an hour with you and your sister, and eventually resurfaced. So we had who wrote the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People? Rabbi Harold Kushner.
Yep.
I believe, or Leo Buscaglia. I forget. But anyway, we had Rabbi Harold Kushner. I forget his book title. I want to say it's When Bad Things Happen to Good People. But anyway, he was at our house, so my dad was not afraid to reach out to people, and it's that if you don't ask, you don't get kind of thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Not to distract that. Keep that thought. If there was something else, sorry to interject, but when people say, if someone were to say to you right now, I'm not an athlete, and I'm not creative, what would your response be?
My response would be, let's dispel the myth of what the definition of an athlete is. To me, when you think of an athlete, when I think of an athlete, okay, pre-CrossFit, whatever, I think of, LeBron James. I think of Carl Lewis. I think of, Joe Montana, Steve Young. I'm a Niners fan. Athletes. But to me, an athlete is somebody that has athletic abilities. So when somebody comes in who's new to the gym, I refer to them immediately as an athlete. And I can tell the body language that maybe they've been told their whole life they're not an athlete, they're an academic, they don't have a coordinated bone in their body, all the shit that parents throw on their kids over the course of time, and says, no, I mean, you can walk, you can run, you can jump, you're an athlete. So that's the answer to the athlete thing. The creative thing, oh my God, Sam, to think about going from being like a math guy in the sense of an accountant, in the form of a tax accountant, to shifting gears, sort of. I mean, CrossFit gym owner coach is kind of like a CPA, but in no way is it like being a CPA. It's nothing to do with. So I like talk about 180-degree shift, right? And then not knowing what I was doing. Another thing I want to say, Sam, is that I mentioned that I had a self-esteem about the width of a toothpick, and there was no way there's no way I would stand up in front of a group, whether it's 5 or 25 athletes, and teach a class. I remember in high school, I walked in and I was the only one there for my first period class, which was speech class. And I asked the teacher if I could begin my speech. There wasn't another student there. I was so terrified. Fast forward to my college days. I took an extra quarter at college to take one class. Guess what it was called? Speech communication. One of the best classes I ever took. So, flash forward to 2005 when I went to Hoffman, I came out of there knowing that, I wasn't put on this earth to please anybody else. And, you want me in front of 1,000 people to give a talk? Tell me when and where, and I'll go. You want me in front of 100,000 people? You want me in front of 10 people? It's all the same. It's just people.
Yeah. It's
just people. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Make that kind of change in life. But you just have to, the tagline at Hoffman, when you're serious about change. And I think you really need to be serious about change.
You've sent or suggested how many people now?
Well, let me first say that the Hoffman Process is a nonprofit organization. Okay, so having said that, I have personally influenced over 250 people to go to Hoffman, including my entire family. And there is no requirement. Yeah. And by the way, guys, for those of you listening again, Sam and I have been in each other's physical presence. How many? One time.
One time.
And I would consider you one of my close friends. Right?
Same. Yeah.
Seriously. We've physically met one time, and we've stayed connected. Sam's since been to Hoffman, trained for SealFit. So And not that this is about Hoffman, but it was the turning point of my adult life. It was the single most important thing that I was made aware of and that I chose to go and do for myself. I cannot imagine my life today had I not chosen the experience of the Hoffman process.
I was going through what you're going through now, the grieving of, you know this story, but the grieving
Yeah.
of my mother, and it was only a couple of months after this. And there's no coincidence, but there's substantial evidence of why I landed there, because there was a sign, and call it woo woo, whatever you want, but I got a direct sign that this is exactly why you're going. So I went, but I also knew my resistance my entire life was labeled as you quit sort of when the going gets rough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's sort of an effortless journey, like, you know, with who you are and what you have and all this kind of stuff. But it was a very depressed, anxious ridden life journey that I had lived. I mean, I dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression along the way, unbeknownst to most people, most all people. But that was shelved as a mask of a certain thing. But at that point, I was so in a place of just raw pain with
Yeah.
my mother's passing.
Mm.
And everything else that had come to that point, like you mentioned, divorce several years before that, and then just life, you know. But that in particular just destroyed me. And I'm thinking about going to this Hoffman process, which I know is a really, you know, like you said, it's a nonprofit. It's an 8-day escape, and you're going to go do some personal work.
Yep.
And nothing intended to tie life up in a pretty bow, but you're going to go find who you are. It's not religious. It's not cultish. It's not anything. It's just, there's a process, like life is a process. I knew at that point something intrinsically that was it was going to be resistant to me going. So I recruited family members to be participants, cooperative components in me making it to Hoffman. I called my dad to take me to the airport. My brother called me when I get to San Francisco. My sister called me because I knew that at some point there was going to be along the way, and every one of those, my whatever thatness was, to go back to just, you know, this is too hard, right? This is too much. But that recruitment worked, and I made it. And when I left, you were the first person I called, and and we had this like, man, wow moment. And ever since then, and it was before that led up to that, there was this guidance that I believe led me to Hoffman through you, and led me to Aspen CrossFit. I still have the t-shirt from the OGs back in 2011 from Aspen CrossFit. But that moment when you share those kind of experiences with someone, and you know they've gone through them, like, you know, going through, you went down every name of everybody you went through Kokoro with. I could name a dozen friends that I'm still close to, but particularly you, because you introduced me to something that was so far outside of my people from Texas, people from Dallas, that I know. I know very few people in my region that have even heard of something like that, because it's so
Yeah.
far out, it's so whacked out,
Yeah.
whatever. But to me, what it did was begin my journey, or really reinforce a journey that, like you, I had already been on and embarked on. I was on a very lonely desert place that guys like Wayne Dyer showed up, and Dr. George Burroughs and Sherry Uber,
Huber.
Uber,
Huber. Yeah.
Uber, my cousin Bo, just people like that showed up at the right time that were like guides, I would say. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very thankful for that. And I like the idea of what you call it, your day is not, it's a daily practice. It's
Right.
not a daily routine. So,
Right.
what, again, back to that question though, how would you, I know what it was for me, but if you were going to say to somebody, what one thing would you do to find who you are being, not what you want to do with the rest of your life or whatever, what would that be in light of all the self-journeying, retreats and things that you've been on in your own life? Where would you say go?
You mean like SealFit, Hoffman, Peak Potentials, etc.?
Anything. Yeah.
Without a doubt, hands down. And again, this is not a recruiting podcast. The
No.
Hoffman process is the single greatest thing that I've ever done in my life. And it was the foundation for all the stuff that came subsequent to that. So stand by. Just
You're
had
there.
a phone call come in from my son. It's the foundation for everything else that I have done. And I mean, take you, for example. You know, you had the incident happen with your knee training for Kokoro, and you said, Eric, should I go to Hoffman or go to SealFit? And I said, hands down, go to Hoffman, because that's going to lay the foundation for a better experience at Kokoro. And, you know, it really gave me a sense of who I am. You know, I had like a little box of social masks that I took with me, one for every different possible thing that I might run into. In fact, I'll tell the story of the day that I was supposed to go to Hoffman. So I got served with divorce on October 7th of 2005. Guy walks in my office. It's right before the October 15th tax deadline. I'm jamming away. He knocks on my open door and walks in and says, I need to give this to you. He hands me a piece of paper and he walks out. So I set it on my desk and I'm cranking away on the computer, and I look over and I look at the bold print at the top. And it says dissolution of marriage. And I thought, oh man, I wonder what client this is for. Cause we used to do a lot of divorce litigation support work, finding all the assets. And, I read down a little bit more and I got to my name. And that was a rough time in my life, no doubt. And a week later, I was made aware of the Hoffman process. And so I feel very fortunate to have made the decision to go. So I fly out to San Francisco and I stay with my friends, Scott and Tracy Lee, and we wake up on Friday morning, and I'm thinking, Scott's going to drive me up to Napa, and we wake up and he's like, oh dude, he's like, I forgot to tell you, Tracy and I are flying to LA to a Stones concert. And I'm like, you're joking, right? I mean, like, my life is coming unraveled before my eyes, and you're telling me you're not going to drive me up there. So he throws me this key fob, and it has a beautiful German emblem on it. And it is a key to a brand spanking new black convertible Porsche. And I'm thinking, there's no freaking way I can drive that up there, He's like, well, that's your ride. Take it or leave it. So I put the top down and got the seat heaters on. And I will say without a doubt that I happen to be a very good driver of that particular car. And it's my favorite car. This happened to be a black Boxster S.
Nice.
And, it's November. The leaves are all changing up in Napa. It smells like vinegar from all the, post-crush and whatnot. So I go roaring up to Napa Valley in this car, having the greatest time. The, stereo's cranked. I got a little knot in my stomach thinking, what in the world am I driving up to? So I drive up there. And you go up that road to White Sulphur Springs, and you come to the property, and it's just this magnificent property. And I parked the car in a spot where there's a bunch of people mingling outside, and the social mask that I was wearing was, people are going to think I'm badass because I'm getting out of my black convertible Porsche, as though that has anything to do with who I am, let alone the fact that it wasn't even my car. So I get out of the car, you know, I kind of nod my head to a guy who's been a friend for the last 15 years now, who I met there. And I wait until there's like even more people gathering outside and to unload my luggage in case somebody happens to see, you know, the dude unloading his stuff from this black convertible Porsche. And I mean, I know it's awesome, isn't it, Sam? I can sit here and tell this story and laugh about it because I thought, well, okay, I'll fit in with this group because they'll think I'm cool because of this car. And, you know, I can tell that story now and laugh at myself. I think it's important to be able to laugh at yourself, but also that was a very real thing for me.
Mm.
You know, sarcasm was a big thing for me. You know, I felt like I didn't have much to contribute or say, so I'll just tell jokes in a sarcastic way. And what I learned at Hoffman was that sarcasm is really only funny to the person that's expressing the sarcasm. You know, and that was a big part of my life. And then alcohol, you know, I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to like sort of settle down and fit in until I have a couple of drinks. And, you know, I haven't had one now for 15 years. And that was a really good choice for me. So I don't necessarily consider myself an alcoholic, but I just chose that alcohol didn't need to be a part of my life. So, but I had this whole box full of these different masks. Like, which one do I need to put on for this situation? And now, you know, there's a saying, what other people think of you is none of your business. And, you know, I mean,
and they're probably not thinking about you.
yeah. Well, they're not going, well, that dude's awesome, check out his car.
They're not thinking, they're thinking about them. I promise you. The older you get you realize that not even your kids are like, oh, I'm thinking about you right now. ATM.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So,
yeah.
hey, by the way,
yeah,
I love you, dude.
I love you
so
too,
much.
man.
And I appreciate your time. And I do have one really, to me, important question, because I ask myself this a lot, and I've asked this to a couple of people on this show. What would you tell the younger you?
Whoa, man. You know, I would tell the younger me, if I could rewind the clock and go back to probably not my early 20s necessarily, I'd have some life experience, but let's just say I would tell my 28, I'm 54, be 55 on October 22nd. I would tell my 28-year-old self that life can go at any moment for any one of us. So make the best of every single day. Find a way to work on yourself to become the absolute best version of yourself. Go off and do what brings you joy. What are your dreams? There are no dreams that are too big. And find out what lights you up and then go do it. You know, somehow the money will follow. Don't become a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant because somebody said, you know, you won't amount to anything unless you go and do that. You know, and I look at what I'm doing now, which is like the polar opposite of what I thought I had to do to get a job after college and, you know, make mom and dad happy. And look, I love my mom and dad. And I'm so fortunate to have the family dynamic that I have. Of course, now with dad gone, but before dad was gone, you know, we have a really tight family unit. Granted, everyone's been to the Hoffman process. Thankfully, that changed our family dynamic. And don't ever wait till it's too late to reach out to somebody. You know, so many families are so broken. And, you know, a friend of mine, one of my summer members, his father just passed away they're from Houston. And, you know, his older brother was estranged from the father. And it's too late. You know, and no matter what, deep down, your parents love you and you love your parents. I'm using that as a general term, you know.
But with family, outside of that, get over the politics. Don't go there. Don't go into anything that's, you know, unless you want to, unless you guys have a common. But right now we're so divided that there are families who can't even talk.
Yeah, there's no question.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I can't wait to do a part 2 of this because I want to talk about photography and I want to talk about some other things. And I really want to hear what's next because I know it's going to be sick, epic.
Yeah.
But right
There's
now,
no doubt about
really,
it.
really badass. So thanks, dude. Hey, give my love to your kids.
I will.
All right, mate. Tell them I
Yeah,
said.
exactly.
Hey. All right, dude. Thank you so much, brother.
That was a lot of fun, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, dude. I'll talk to you soon. All right, man.
Okay, bud. I'll talk to you soon.
This winter. Later.
All right. Bye.